Welcome to another episode of the Luke Humphrey Running Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Humphrey, and our mission is to help you maximize your training through a blend of science and practicability. So let's get going. Hey, welcome back. This is Luke talking. I know that we've had problems in the past with the volume, and I think I've got it almost figured out. I know it's not perfect, but I think it's a lot better than what it was. So I apologize about that, but I think we've got it on the right track now. So today we're going to talk a little bit about easy runs and how they should feel during peak training. And lucky for me, I have the Facebook group, the Luke Humphrey Running Community. That's a free public group that really anybody can join. Just answer some questions and then you'll automatically be accepted in, or I can make sure you're not a bot, as my daughter would say, and make sure you're okay to put in. But in any case, I get a lot of content, get a lot of questions from folks. And my boy Phil, I've never met Phil, but he's actually posted a couple of good questions for me, and been able to get some good questions. And this is from him again. This is, I think, the second one we've used on for an episode. So he asks, once well into the plan, do your easy days truly feel easy? You know, and like I said, this was asked by one of our Facebook members, but I think he was hinting at his workouts were okay, but easy runs were now kind of an issue, being stiff, sore, a little bit sluggish. So, and as others noted in their responses to Phil, they felt like it took miles for them to warm up and shake these feelings, at least to an extent. But they're, so these are big concerns for sure. But if you've never, I think a lot of it too is that if you've never been in this situation before, it's hard to differentiate. So it could be easy to confuse hard training with going overboard. And if you've never been here, that might be something that you can't differentiate from, or you don't know how to differentiate from, especially with marathon training. So the short answer to Phil is yes. I think it's completely normal. Those easy days following a big workout can be brutal. And if you were to look at my training logs, it would be common to see an easy day following a workout day that looked something like first mile 8 minutes, then 7:45, then 7:30, and then you got past that 3 mile mark, and runs would be under the miles would be under 7 minute pace for the rest of the way. And when I was training at peak volume, there'd be about a 6-week block where it would be really tough. They could be really tough for the psyche if I were to judge my marathon capabilities on how my easy runs were going, right? So we hit those workouts and we think that the easy run's going to feel pretty darn comfortable, and in reality that's not the case at all. So as others noted, the easy days were harder than the workout days, and I can definitely attest to that. We're more likely to be in the zone for a workout. We pay a little bit more attention to our diet, our hydration, fueling during the workouts, and our adrenaline's higher. It's a bigger deal, right? And meanwhile, we go through the motions on the easy days, right? So mentally we're not there. We're just kind of putting our time in. And so we tend to notice that we don't feel very good, right? And then when we're working out, it's like you're thinking about other things too, right? You're thinking about hitting the pace, and you expect it to feel hard. Whereas the easy day, you're not necessarily expecting it to feel hard. But if you find yourself in this position, and I'm talking, you find yourself in this position, say you're in an 18-week program, if you find this in like weeks 10 and closer to the race, so like 10, 12, 14 weeks in, yeah, you're definitely in cumulative fatigue. Welcome to the club. This is where the magic happens, but it's also time to be diligent and not to drift into overtraining. And I think that's where a lot of people don't necessarily understand what the difference would really be. So easy runs slowing down is definitely one thing, but if the workouts are slowing down too, then we've probably got an issue, right? So it ultimately will always come down to, are the workouts slowing down? Because in reality, if we're running a little bit of mileage early on but not doing very much intensity, those easy runs it's pretty common to just be a little out of control on those easy runs. And you're not sprinting them or anything, but They're definitely faster than they probably need to be, but the fact that we're so fresh allows us to do that. And then once we get into the hard training, we're not fresh anymore and we're fatigued. And so those easy runs are going to slow down, and they naturally should slow down, in my opinion. I think that's a good sign that you're taking the steps necessary to run the appropriate paces that you're supposed to. But the key thing here is you just can't panic, right? You can't judge how your easy runs were when you were fresh compared to when you got a lot of junk in your legs. So the big question becomes, how do we combat this? And unfortunately, there's no magic pill here, but we can address the symptoms a little bit. So the first thing is be on point with recovery, nutrition, and hydration. I know I say this all the time, but it's a thing that I see that's overlooked all the time. That stiffness and soreness means that there's tissue damage, and it can't repair without the right fuel and in the right volume. So make sure you're focusing on that, and then do it, and I'd even add to the right window too. So that 30 minutes after a hard workout's really important for jump starting that repair process. If I do a workout in the morning, then I will do some foam rolling or some light stretching in the hours afterwards. So like in the evening. So if I work out in the morning, I'll try to do some light stretching or foam rolling in the evening. And then the hours in between, you really want to make sure you're focusing on those fluids and getting the recovery nutrition in that you need, getting the right carbohydrate, getting the right protein, and getting all those things taken care of, so that you can actually allow your muscles to repair from the damage that you've done to them. My foam rolling isn't going to be super hard, but we will try to flush things out and work on the trouble spots. So for me, it's going to be calves, quads, hip flexors, things like that. That's where I tend to get the most of it. I'll do a dynamic warm-up before a run. I've gotten a lot better at that as I've gotten older. This might be as simple as a few bodyweight squats and some leg swings, just to open up the range of motion and kind of bridge that gap between rolling out of bed and going for a run. It's a big shock to the body to do that. And if we're super sore and super stiff from workout the day before, then that makes it more difficult. So that can actually just kind of get you loosened up, ready to roll a little bit. They don't have to be long, just a couple of minutes. Don't expect a miracle here, but it can shorten up the warm-up time you need. So maybe instead of kind of feeling, dreaded air quotes, normal after 3 miles, maybe we can reduce that down to taking a mile or so to warm up. And then just that there's not that as big of a range between the start of your run and then when you get warmed up and into your settled in pace. So the last thing I'd say about this is that being in this space is not bad. And to me, it means that you are in a place where you are challenging yourself beyond your normal comfort zone. And like I said, this is where the growth actually happens. So if you monitor it correctly, this is where the big adaptations will come. You're basically taking yourself to that line, but then taking care of the things we just talked about, the three areas we talked about. You kind of pull yourself back off that line. You never fully go over that. And if you can manage that, then you're going to get all those adaptations, because you're doing the hard work, but you're also recovering from the hard work and allowing your body to recover from the hard work. And that's where ultimately you're going to see those big improvements. So again, your biggest indicator here is going to be if your performance decreases or not. So like I said, if your easy runs are slowing down, but your workouts are okay, then to me that's the pure definition of cumulative fatigue, right? And again, this is like in the last 4, 6, 8 weeks of the marathon, especially if you're in a longer bit of a program. That's where you're going to feel that. But if it's all of a sudden everything's kind of trending downward, then we need to be a little bit more careful. We need to kind of take a look at what's going on. In my recent podcast, look at the carbohydrate, look at your iron levels. Maybe those are sources of fatigue. A lot of times it's going to come from those little things like nutrition and hydration, and really just not allowing yourself the opportunity to recover from what you need to do. And I will say this too, I think if you're doing the classic plans, that Tuesday, Thursday workout is tough for a lot of people, right? Because it's one thing to do that, but I think if you're not used to that volume, then adding another day of recovery in there is pretty important. And that's kind of why I made the alternator plans, and and I've gone and moved some things over to like a 9-day cycle. And we've actually, when I was training hard, running 140 miles a week, I was on a 9-10 day cycle, and that worked out a lot better for me. But obviously you have to have a lot more time during the week, and some people just don't have that time And it's going to make it worse, actually, if we try to fit more in during the week. So, but the alternator plan works really well for that. So, again, the alternator plan would really be 1 week you do the traditional Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, and you come back the next week and you do like a Tuesday, Saturday type of thing. So like if you look at the Hanson's Marathon method, the classic plans that Kevin Keith made, you basically will go Tuesday, Thursday, and then Sunday's a long run, but every other week it's a shorter long run. So like if you're in that point where you're doing a 15, 16 mile long run, it might go 15 one week, and then you go down to 10 the next week, and then you go up to 15 or up to 16 the next week. So every other week you kind of have a break from a traditional long run. And to me, that's the perfect opportunity. So that week where you have the big long run would stay normal. But then I've got it so that instead of the next week where we just do Tuesday and Thursday, you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday really kind of recover, and Monday. I would actually spread those two more intense days out and give you like a Tuesday, Saturday type of thing. And then that still gives you Sunday and Monday to recover before you go back into an SOS on Tuesday. So those plans are available on Final Surge. You can go to just finalsurge.com/training plans, and then we're the very first people on there. You'll see the Luke Humphrey running with the H wings on there, and you can take a look at all those plans. I mean, a lot of different options, and we definitely do them by weeks and volume, and then I label them alternators. So there's a lot of different options on there for you, but they would be like a traditional 18-week plan, but just set up alternating those weeks that I just described. So, but anyway, but overall, I think the big thing is, you look at how well you're recovering, how well you're handling the hydration and nutrition and things like that. But don't expect, like, to me, that's, like I said, that's a very normal thing to be in when those easy days feel pretty stiff and sore. The other point I was going to make on that was also that that Tuesday, Thursday, sometimes an easy run in between there actually helps. And if you really want that day off, that's fine. Maybe go for a walk or a really light bike ride or something like that, just to kind of get the legs turning a little bit on that Wednesday. That's traditionally an off day, and that it's actually helped a lot of people kind of keep their legs moving, and actually helps them feel a little better when they come back to the SOS on Thursday. And if you wanted to, you could even move an off day to maybe like Friday after that, and then you have off Friday, easy Saturday, and then a long run Sunday. It'd be another option that people could do. But you're still following the same basic premise of the plan. You're just kind of tweaking it to fit your ability to recover a little bit better. So all kinds of options out there for you. But overall, welcome to the Hard Training Club. And I think that's key. Don't let the details that be an afterthought, as these will help you strive during the weeks of hard workouts. They pay off when kept into the right range is cumulative fatigue, but it's resilience, toughness, and the ability to grind it out when things are going to be tough for you during the marathon. And there's going to be spots where you feel okay, and then there's going to be spots where it feels pretty tough. And so if you've been able to practice those things with training and come out okay, you're gonna be a lot more likely to do that on the race too, because it's not something that's brand new to you. You've gone through it before, and that's a big thing. Like, you don't want to be surprised on race day, and this actually helps a lot of things that you'll go through on race day with this type of training. So, but the big thing is to recognize the difference, I guess. So if you're stiff and sore, but it loosens up during the run, that's good, right? That to me, that's typical hard training, stiffness and soreness, and you're just loosening up. But on the flip side of that, if you're in a position where you have sharp pains, a limp, or pain that gets worse as you run, and that's a big thing. Pain that gets worse as you run is always a bad sign. Then it's time to take a step back and get some answers, whether you go see a doctor, you get some blood work drawn. If you're limping, it's pretty obvious that you have an injury. And then you need to make sure you're seeing the right people. And then I would also say, if you're in that position, then you need to stop it right away. Get those answers as soon as you can, because the more you drag it out, the worse it's going to be. And so you could potentially take yourself from a position where if I stop now and get answers, I can still piece it together and run on race day. But more times than not, if you just keep pushing through and say, well, the telltale sign is when you see somebody who starts out a segment, they're fresh, they feel good, and then by the time you get like to within 4 or 6 weeks. Now they're wearing compression socks. They got they're KT taped up from head to toe. They getting the foam roller out. They got the stick out. They got the little the massagers out, and they're doing this all before a run just so that they can go run. That's a pretty good sign that you're probably injured, right? And so keep those things in mind. But like I said, if you try to deny it to yourself, if you have those sharp pains and it gets harder to run, paces fall off, you're limping, things like that. Like I said, get those answers right away, and it might be something that's salvageable. But I can tell you that if you keep pushing, it's probably not going to be salvageable, because then what's going to happen is you're going to push through for another week or so. Then you're going to be in a point where you can't run at all, and so then you're going to say, well, I'll take 2 weeks off and I'll still try to run, and then it's a snowball effect, and it usually never ends well. But that's another story for another day, and that's something we can talk about later on. But for now, if it's just general soreness, it's not a sharp pain, it loosens up when it runs, you're just running a little bit slower, and you're 4 to 6 weeks out from your race, maybe even 8 weeks out, to me that's just hard training, and that's really part of cumulative fatigue. So that's another good thing to take with you, is that's because cumulative fatigue is always hard to define. That's a big part of it right there that we're talking about. So for Phil and all the others that responded onto his thread, I think it is perfectly normal, and it sounds like a lot of people handled it very well. But the key there is you can't get caught up in the pace. Just treat it as an easy run. It's time on your feet. You don't have to be super fast on these. It's more about making sure your workouts are quality, and then saving it for race day. So that's it for now. Easy days are hard when they're in the middle of a marathon training segment. That's the key takeaway. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. If you want to go check out some training plans, finalsurge.com/training plans. And we are the very first button to select from Luke Humphrey Running, H-Wings, black and white print. So check those out for me, and we'll talk to you later. All right, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Luke Humphrey Running Podcast with your host, Luke Humphrey. If you like our show and want to learn more, please visit us at www.lukehumphrey.running.com for blogs, podcasts, coaching, and training options. See you next time.